I'm Samantha Abrams, and today we're going to talk about restorative justice in schools. It's not a situation in which you are just having a nice conversation where everyone shares their feelings and then everyone goes on their merry way. There is a really big piece around accountability and holding people accountable for the actions and the impact that they've had, the harm that they've created, and making sure that they somehow make up for that. But unlike the more traditional justice system, which is all about punishment, you address the problem at the root of the problem. The concept of it being a paradigm shift from you broke a rule, you need to be punished, to you caused harm, you need to repair the harm. People have a reason for what they do, and they want to be able to explain themselves. People who are harmed want to explain how they were harmed and the pain that they were caused. And they really want to explain it to the person who caused the pain. Even if you didn't do anything else in the process, that would be a hugely impactful thing. Instead of two people facing each other, arguing with each other, it's people sitting next to each other, looking at the problem solving together, this third party that's like the problem. It's all voluntary. Everyone who participates has to agree to using this process, and the person who caused the harm needs to show that they feel remorse and that they understand that they've done something wrong. So if someone's still like denying that they did it, or lying, or not taking responsibility, then they would not even participate in this process. This is something that is being tried all over the United States. And I think actually a big problem is that the level of fidelity of the implementation varies widely. It definitely responds to the fact that like Black and Hispanic students are way disproportionately suspended, and often suspended for things that white students are not suspended for. In the San Francisco School District, during the 2011-2012 school year, Black students accounted for 1,063 suspensions after restorative practices have been implemented. In the 2013 to 2014 school year, those numbers dropped to 576 students. When there's a conflict, it's usually not just between two people. So if you only address the one person who did something wrong, you're leaving out the rest of the community who's been impacted by this. Traditionally, you ask a kid to do something and they say no. You ask them again, they say no. You ask them again, they say no. The teacher would just kick the kid out of class. They'd say, okay, go to the dean, go to the principal. Problem with that is now the kid is not in class, so they're missing the material. You have like basically excommunicated them from the community. And if you have enough kids that are doing this, you end up with a lot of kids in the principal's office or the dean's office. Eventually the idea is like, okay, we're gonna send them home, which is suspension. The alternative here is, let's say this is a chronic problem, to have a meeting where you could invite in the student, a friend of the student as like a support system, the student's parents, the social worker. Like you can invite even in members of NGOs who work in the community, the principal, the students' teachers, and have what we call a circle where it starts off with, what do we love about this student? Why do we care about this student? Why are we here? And then have the student explain what's been going on for them. There's a beautiful example of this in the Oakland School District, where ultimately what it came down to is the student was worried about their mom, and like, well, the student ended up crying about being worried about the mom, then like uncovering like, well, why is the student worried about their mom? Well, the mom doesn't have a job right now. What can we do? What resources do we have to support this mom? Kids don't just act out for no reason. They're acting out for a reason. Have to pre-conference with the people who are going to be in this meeting or in the restorative conversation. So you need to have a conversation with the student. You need to have a conversation with the parents. If you have NGOs there, you need to have a conversation with all of them to make sure that they understand what the process is, what the purpose is, and that they're actually prepared to participate properly. In the case of a fight, you don't bring two students together when they're still escalated. This would not happen until days later. The kids are de-escalated. They've been pre-conference with, they want to make it right. I think another thing that people don't understand is this might be in addition to a suspension. There are certain really high level things, like a really bad fight, that schools are still suspending for. But you would have the restorative conversation between the two students. They would come to some way for them to make it up to each other, but also to their classroom. But you would also have a conversation with the class. A mistake that I think the San Francisco School District made was they had 10 restorative justice coaches and we were responsible for every single school. I think the more effective thing would have been say, okay, we have 10 coaches. That's all we can afford. We're going to put those 10 coaches in the most needy schools and have one coach per school. If you're only listening to your students when they're acting out, that is problematic, which is why it's really important that you're doing a lot of the preventative work. You know your students and you can pick up when they're not feeling well or when something's off, and you just say, hey, how are you doing? You seem like you're upset today.